Okay, guys, well, welcome to another episode of Mishmash with Scott Moore and Nicholas McConnaughay, where we talk about entertaining things, non-entertaining things, and things that just come to our head. Today we're going to be talking about Stranger Things. Let's start it off with, how are you doing, Nick? You're doing weird. Which goes right into Stranger Things.
I already have your little introduction part, so really all I have to say is how I'm doing, and I can get it in there.
It's gonna be okay.
That is so weird. That is like, you can't just ask me how I'm doing. Like that's like whenever you walk by someone and like when you're going to the store or something, they're like, "How you doing?" And then they're walking away, and I'm like, "I'm doing very good. I went to the wait, you're leaving."
Well, I mean, it's not like one of those things where you really care. It's one of those things where you just ask.
It reminds me of like whenever I'm at work, there's one guy in particular, and he always goes like, "Hey Nick, how you doing?" And then I'm like, "I'm doing good. How are you?" And he's like, "Okay." And he walks away.
Are those people that say, "How are you doing?" and then you start to answer, and then you ask them how they're doing, and they just walk away and don't say nothing to you. You're like, "Oh, I guess you're doing great. Thanks for asking." Stranger Things. So I binge watched it in 2 separate sections. I watched 1 through 6 in one day, and then I got real tired, so I had to stop off, and I finished it off in a section where I did 3 episodes. So it was really quick. Really binge watched it exactly like I did the first one, exactly like I said I wouldn't, because I wanted to make this last longer, but it didn't.
It took me a little longer. I was originally going to watch it with my girlfriend because we had watched the first Stranger Things together. However,
But I told him that wasn't a good idea because I needed to do the podcast now.
Like, we had watched the first 3 episodes together, and then she basically said, like, "You can watch it if you want." I'm like, "I don't want to do that." And then she's like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "I'm on episode 7.
One of those things where you like cheat on your significant other with a TV show and they get really upset, so you just don't tell them. And then she listens to the podcast and is like, "What?" So whenever I watched season 2, I didn't come into it with any kind of judgment. I was wondering if it would be as good as the first season. I didn't hold out hope because every time I hold out hope for a series, it ends up being a crap fest the second season, and I really didn't know how you were going to follow up a Demogorgon. I was also very upset when they showed 11 inside the trailers, so I did not know how it was going to go, and I know that me and Nick here disagree on this, but I believe that it was better than season 1.
I wouldn't necessarily I'd say I disagree with that. Like, I do think that it's better season 1. Like, we have some differences in what we think about it. Like, for instance, like, I believe at one point we were talking about it, and I said I'd give it an 8 out of 10. And I think you said 9.6 out of 10. Like,
I did. I said 9.6.
These are, like, arbitrary ratings. They don't, off the top of
I think
our
they
head.
mean a lot. I think they mean a lot. No? All right.
Yeah. Like, I think that the show is really, really well made, and I like it a lot. It's just, I don't necessarily think that it achieves the utmost of greatness. Like, it's not in the upper echelon for me. I do think that it was very, very well made. I think that it takes a lot of elements from movies such as Poltergeist, like, especially in the first season, if you look at it, like how, I can't remember her name in the show, she's Winona Ryder, the mom of Will, like how she communicates with the light bulbs, or at the very beginning, the Christmas lights.
Yeah. That's
kind of on the order of, it harkens back to Poltergeist. And I think that definitely there is a lot of inspiration taken from Stephen King. I think actually at one point Stephen King said on his Twitter page that while he was watching Stranger Things, he thought that it was like a highlight reel for his works. He thought it reminded him of Stand By Me, of It, and so I definitely enjoy it in that regard. Like, I think that it's very respectful, and not only does it take elements from some other things, but it also delves into and creates something that might even be better than those source materials that it took from.
I think one of the disagreements that we have, and her name is Joyce. Will's mom's name is Joyce. I didn't remember that off the top of my head for some reason. I had to Google it, I'm not gonna lie. I feel that while it does have, the sprinkles of It, Poltergeist, Stand By Me. Stand By Me is a big one. I think the Stand By Me
like,
is
it's not necessarily with the subject matter. It's not, because, like, obviously Stand By Me is not about anything like this. It's the certain thing that Stephen King does with his books, where it's the
shows penises.
Yeah, shows penises. Either that or children or children orgies. If he's feeling risque. But like, he captures a certain like innocence, except for when he has orgies. And I think that like Stand By Me and It are pretty good examples of that, of how he has kids interacting and dealing with adult situations.
See, I'm not disagreeing with you on that point. So I think the disagreement that we had the other night whenever we were talking about Stranger Things for the first time was that you said it lacked originality. I don't agree in that sense that it lacked originality.
No. I didn't say it lacked originality. Whenever we were talking, I was talking about the Mad Max. Whenever she was talking about it, like whenever one character, the one that wears the bandana.
Which one?
The dark white person.
The dark white person.
It has a darker complexion than the rest. He's black. He's
the black kid. Yeah. So his name is Lucas.
I saw a meme the other day, and that's why I heard it was like a guy talking, and like he was reporting someone, and he was like the dark white person, the person with like.
Which threw me off because I thought you meant like a tan. I was like, I don't know anybody in there who tans.
No, Lucas. Whenever he was talking to Max, he was talking to her, and like he explained his story to her and all this stuff. Her reply was, "It was a good story. It was a little bit derivative. I wish that it could be a little bit more original." And that's what I was talking about, like, because it wasn't necessarily my beliefs. It was just something that a lot of people had already said about it. That was one of the things that people use as a criticism. I think that it definitely takes elements from other things, but I think it introduces a lot of things in its own right.
So I think it does it originally by stealing from other entities. Now, what I mean by that is that if you look at it, it's an 80s retro TV show in 2017. And I don't care what anybody says. If you would have down in 2015, whenever the year that this came out, I believe, season 1, and you would have said, I want to do a show where everything is retro 80s. Dig Dug is going to be an integral part of season 2. And you're actually going to have elements of Dig Dug in there, where Dig Dug actually is a big part of the story. I would have never, ever been able to be like, yeah, it's probably going to, flop. It's probably going to fail. But then you really did really well by bringing it to an audience with originality that I didn't think was going to be able to be brought with such a concept.
I think that, whenever they did the first season, I don't think that they had nearly the expectations for it. They didn't think it was going to take off the way that it did. However, after season 1, I think they came to a realization, I think that's been come to before, is that people love the 80s and people just enjoy it. It's very nostalgic, and as a matter of fact, it's something that I think has been exploited since then. Like with the movie It Chapter 1, it like harkens back to that feeling of the 80s. It very much feels like the 80s. And with that movie was able to make, it's up to $670 million right now. I think it's about to, if it hasn't already, it's about to take Sixth Sense as the #1 horror film of all time. Not adjusted for inflation, of course, but in general.
So talking about ratings, I seen, and this is just totally off topic about what we're talking about, but I saw that Stranger Things is actually more popular than The Walking Dead now, which is, Walking Dead was the most popular TV show, and I think Stranger Things overtook it.
Is it in terms of viewership or...
Viewership, yes, in terms of viewership. Which Game of Thrones is really close as well, I know.
It's difficult to gauge Netflix, though, and I think they
gauge it by how many clicks it had, as opposed to how many people are watching it at once.
I thought I read an article that said 15.8 million watched it over the weekend.
Over the first weekend, yeah.
It's the format of Netflix, too, that assists it, because it encourages binge watching. Basically, ahead of time, in your head, you've already dedicated that weekend. Like, that's
how frustrated are you if you can't binge watch this show? Because every single episode leaves you at that point where you're like, I have to watch the next episode because I can't go to bed now because everybody's dying. And there's no way that you're going to get out of it. And then they get out of it. And you're like, oh, okay. But now they're definitely dying because this episode ended. So the only episode that I feel that didn't do that was the episode that we agreed on was episode 8. So I think every series, every show has a clunker. Yeah, I think that episode 8 was probably the clunker of Stranger Things.
I would say that I felt invested, at least to a certain degree, all the way through, except for episode 8. And at one point we were talking about it, and you said that it was still good.
I didn't hate it. And the reason I didn't hate it is because I felt that Elle really needed that to develop. I don't think that she needed it so much. I know that they were going through that whole storyline, is Elle a killer? I don't think that we ever needed that because we knew that Elle was a good guy from season 1. I mean, she sacrificed herself to save everyone. Plus, she had that innocent, cute little love with Mike. So I don't think we needed that little arc. But I think that we needed her to show that there were others like her. It also showed that, Dr. Brenner could still possibly be alive. I think those two big things will probably play a part in later.
On one hand, it's not like I'm suffering as I watch it. It's entertaining, but at the same time, I felt like during that episode, I found it very difficult to care because I cared so much more about the other things that were going on. And
unpopular opinion. I believe that I always equate it to this. It was good, but it wasn't good for Stranger Things. And I say that for like video games, like Fallout 4. It was a massively popular game. I played it and I hated it. But I didn't hate it as a game. I hated it as a Bethesda game or a Fallout game because I didn't feel that it met the potential that other Bethesda games have previously brought to me. I didn't feel the fun. I didn't feel the excitement. And I think that's maybe what people are getting at with episode 8.
And I feel like at the same time, like, certain scenes with Eleven, I mean, there's an expression that goes that less is more. And it's not necessarily that she had a mystique around her, which I guess she kind of did have a mystique to her. But, like, the scenes where I get to see her mom and I get to see, like, more of her backstory, I feel like I almost, like, I didn't feel as invested to it as I would otherwise if she, like, hanging out. Like, it takes her very, very long before she even like interacts with her friends again, and which is something I like because it like doesn't go for immediate gratification. Like it builds to it because it knows that's what the audience wants to see is her back with her friends again. I don't know, the scenes with her backstory I found to be kind of the more like slogging moments in the series.
I think it gave her innocence. It gave her character and depth. So whereas last season you kind of didn't know what she was or was not feeling, she was just kind of that stoic character that would sometimes, feel for Mike or feel for the other kids. And this one, it actually gave her that innocence or that feeling, and it made her a person. And I think I like that, that it made her a person. It made you feel for her. It made you want to kind of follow her story. Now, again, episode 8 probably wasn't my favorite episode of the series. It was by far probably the worst episode. Saying that, though, I'd still give it a pretty okay. I mean, it was very X-Men-ish, so it almost brought it out. And I think that's kind of what it was. Maybe a little bit, too, that it almost made it feel modern. Like, that was a modern-feeling episode. It wasn't, like, it didn't have that retros 80 feel. I think, too, it lacked this season. 11's story kind of lacked because she didn't have that Dr. Brenner character. Dr. Brenner was replaced with an aloof, kind of goofy scientist who ended up sacrificing himself so that way everybody else could live. I mean, he didn't really sacrifice himself because he didn't die. But, I mean, sort of like led Bob through everything and got the other people out of the building or the lab. So
he tried to get Bob out of the lab.
Yeah, Bob didn't do too well getting out of the lab. So let's go into asking about Bob, because I've seen a bunch of stuff about Bob about maybe interconnecting to it with his fear, which would go to your saying of Stranger Things has a lot of Stephen King. Well, Bob was in the car with Will whenever he was telling Will to just stand up to the shadow monster, which, by the way, was the worst advice of all time. But he's talking about him going to the circus and that clown. Is the clown, is it Pennywise?
I didn't actually even think of that, but I suppose like it could have been like a nod of some sorts.
I think it was. I think it was a nod to Pennywise and all that. But Bob gave the worst advice ever. And at that point in that episode, I thought, Bob's the big bad. He's got to be, right? Because you don't give that crappy of advice about the shadow monster and not be the bad guy who was sent to like spy and make sure that the shadow monster was able to become free. Because this is the next thing that Will does is stands in the football field and the shadow monster kind of just goes right through his skull.
That was like a weird looking visual too.
It was very weird looking visual.
One thing about Bob, and I think it brings it back to what I said about like how I rated it an 8, is one criticism that I did have with Stranger Things, and it's not really a criticism because for the most part I think that it is a good story that is just well made. But at the same time, I feel like I never at any point had any doubt in regards to what was going to happen through and through. Like, I remember whenever Bob died, I said to you immediately, like, I knew from the get-go he was being introduced so he could be killed off, and they wouldn't have to kill off any of their main ensemble characters. And I feel like there's a certain feeling of everyone's safe, and like that carries away through, because through and through, I never felt like any threat whatsoever that any character was going to die. And I feel like that kept it from cranking up the tension to the upper echelon, because they were so protective of certain characters.
You know what I feel is that plot armor in almost every show annoys me to no end. Like, if I'm watching Game of Thrones and they have plot armor on characters, which they didn't up until season 6, but if they have plot armor on characters, it annoys me to no end. Because, like you said, I know that Jon Snow's going into the Abyss and he's coming back, because he's not going to die. He's got plot armor. He has to survive to the end. But I feel that in Stranger Things, that it doesn't really matter. It's about that connection with the characters, and it's not so much about, do you think they're going to die? Because no, you're right, I didn't not one time think that Mike or Lucas or Dustin or Will, I didn't think any of them were going to die, and that wasn't the point of it for me. I knew that they weren't going to die. I was worried about how they were going to destroy the Demodogs and also the Shadow Monster. So it never came to the point of, are they going to die? It was more like, how are they going to live? So I think that's how I looked at it. It wasn't so much of, the tension wasn't, for me, biting my nails going, oh God, Mike could die in this episode. No, it was more like, how is Mike going to survive? Because I know he is, but
it's
how
like
are they
you
doing?
enjoy the ride.
I do. I enjoy the ride.
And I see that, and I understand that in pretty much all respects. It's just, and it doesn't keep me from enjoying it. Like, I still consider it very good. It's just that keeps it to me from becoming great, is because I never feel anything except for just like this is entertaining. I'm watching these kids just hang out, and those are the best moments to me, honestly, even more than
the kids are amazing. Like, I don't know how you find 5 kid actors just out of nowhere and just put them into a room and say, guys, just go ahead and talk and entertain millions of adults.
I feel like those moments are like the moments that I enjoy even more than like the situation itself. I'm like, just hang out. Let's have the Stranger Things hangout show.
Every once in a while, have a Demodog pop through the window and Dustin say something corny and funny, and then it'll be fine.
Who would you say was the best character
Dart.
overall? Dart?
Who was the best character overall? Who was the best new character overall is, I'm going to say, Bob, because I loved Bob. I think he was corny and cheesy, but I think he was hilarious.
I think the thing is, I think he was realistically cheesy and corny too. It wasn't like he wasn't like hamming it up as a performance. Like,
it didn't seem over the top.
That seems like that's how he acts in his real life.
Right. Like, if you met him, you would definitely meet him in Radio Shack, and he would definitely tell you all the ins and outs of this awesome new AV handheld radio. But overall, my favorite character of the season was Will. I think Will did an amazing job being... Because what this season was lacking in comparison to season 1, in a lot of people's opinion, including mine, was that the Demogorgon was this made beast to be bigger than life. And it was almost like, how are you going to kill it? How are you going to kill it? The Shadow Monster wasn't, how are you going to kill it? How are you going to kill it? It was always like, can you outsmart it? So it was more like a psychological thriller as opposed to that big bad. It was more like a psychological game in your head. So you needed something to kind of give you that creepy feeling that Stranger Things is kind of known for. And I think Will did that. Especially when, his mom, Joyce, was making the bath, and he's like, he doesn't like it hot. He likes it cold. And you're sitting there, and Will's face is so placid and stoic, and all of a sudden he's just looking at you, and you feel that maybe Will is gonna kill his mom. Then in the scene where they're in the shed, and you just feel it. Will did a really, really good job being the Shadow Monster while also being Will, and I think that he probably had the best scenes of the entire show. Is he my favorite character? No, Dustin's my favorite character, but Will probably had the best performance.
What's interesting is, I definitely think that he did well. I think Will did really well. And for some reason, whenever you said his name, the first thing I thought of, and the first thing that's the thing that's playing over and over again, is whenever he has that seizure in the cornfield or whatever.
Yeah.
Whenever just that that motion he did, it was really, really, I don't know, very memorable.
The jerk.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that what's interesting is, though, I like all of the I like all of the kid characters for sure, and them together is my favorite part of the show. But I think that my favorite character might have been Jim Hopper.
I like Hopper.
Like the cop, which is funny because I didn't think that whenever I watched the first season. I thought he came off kind of like a jerk, but he was it was like an archetype. Like he was a jerk, but you felt that he had a deeper, more sensitive side to him, whereas in this one it feels like he's just likable from the get-go. Like he has some times where he comes off kind of like a jerk, like whenever he's trying to discipline Eleven, and at some points when he yells at her and all this stuff. But I think that he might have been my favorite character, and since like how I said he got better in season 2, I also thought that Steve got a lot better in season 2. Whereas I didn't really think much of him in the first season. However, whenever I saw him in this season...
I was sad that he wasn't with Nancy anymore.
Yeah, I was sad because I didn't... The thing is, I didn't have any real thoughts or connection to Will's older brother this season. I wanted him to go away so that...
Yeah, Jonathan in the first season, I was like, yeah, get Nancy, get her. And then the second season, I was kind of like, I don't know, I kind of wish Steve would have just stayed with her, and I don't know why. I feel as if...
I think it was at the point whenever... Dustin and them first started like talking to Steve, and whenever he goes out to the bus and all that stuff, and how he's how he just jumps on board with everything. He's like, I got my bat, and he's like,
I like the part where Steve is sitting there and Dustin's like telling Mad Max almost like he doesn't care, and Steve's like, that's how you do it, and then he gives him the thumbs up, and he goes, I don't care, and Steve gives him the wink, the thumbs up, he goes, why are you winking? like that was funny. I don't know. It's those little moments of character development and connection that I feel really makes Stranger Things work.
Because for the first season, I had it in my mind that Steve was something of a cowardly character. Whereas with this one, at one point he just he gets off the bus for one, with the kids are in there, and he's willing to put himself on the line, trying to attack Dart. He takes the lead whenever they're in the cave as well. But he's one character I feel like I liked a lot.
He matured a lot.
Yeah,
he did. He matured a lot during the course of the season, the course of the episodes. Because at the beginning of the season, I thought he was just same old Steve. Especially the points where he didn't care about Barb. And I don't know that he didn't care. He just knew that there was nothing he could do. So there was that. I feel like Barb is still, being talked about, and nothing's being done about her still. Oh, we did finally get to lay her to rest this season, though.
Well, actually, they did culminate it with the the final season. Or not final season, but the final episode.
The reporter?
Yeah.
I like the reporter sitting out there with his whiskey.
I like how awkward, I've had people in my life are very, very blunt whenever they talk about things. And especially people that I don't know very well. But, the way he just, sits down with them, Jonathan and Nancy. Whenever he's just sitting there,
pretty
casual,
much telling them bump uglies.
Yeah, basically telling them to, share the bed and all that stuff. And then he,
quit being a pansy.
And then he comes in, during breakfast and all that stuff, and he's like, hey, Jonathan, how was the pullout?
That was great. That was the pullout. Oh, yeah, that was good. I felt like that tension between Jonathan and Nancy at that scene was pretty good. Up to that point, seriously, up to that point to where they finally escalated and they had their triathlon and they completed the race, I was rooting for Jonathan. And then Steve started having all these scenes, and I was like, poor Steve, though. I mean, how are you going to just leave Steve in the cold? He's over here, and he's got to be in scenes with Dustin now, who now has teeth. I mean, it's just... But Dustin really made a lot of those, too. I think that he really matured. I think we had a discussion where you said Dustin felt like he was the oldest of the boys.
Yeah, there's certain characters like Will, and I think that it makes sense if you're looking at it from a character standpoint, because I said that Will seems younger, but that's also because not looks physically young than Dustin, but also because he is treated differently, because Joyce is kind of protective over him, and he's very, very protected. But yeah, I had certain characters where I thought, where it seemed like Dustin seemed older than the rest of them just because of the way he carried himself.
Yeah, I also think that, it is personality is what I was telling you. Will has a different personality than Dustin. Dustin's actually, he showed more interest in girls this season. Will didn't really show interest in girls, which I thought was really weird at that scene at the very end where they were having the ball. And, this random girl just comes up and asks Will. He's called Zombie Boy. He's bullied. He's made fun of. And all of a sudden, it doesn't make any sense. It was random. I understand why Mad Max and Lucas danced. That makes sense. They had chemistry throughout the entire show. I understand why Mike and Eleven danced. Makes sense.
So
I understand why Dustin went and talked to everybody, because Dustin, he got a lot of confidence. He got
this pearly whites.
He got his pearly whites. And
can't do that thing he does.
Also don't do that. Also got his hairspray. He got advice from Steve, and then he got shot down. So I understand where he was coming from. It was just Will. It was just random. It was like, we need to get rid of Will so that way we can give Dustin
want Dustin to cry.
right. We need Dustin to cry, and Will can't be standing beside him if he's gonna cry. So let's just throw this random chick in here for Will and make him feel really good about himself, but never bring her back or talk about her again.
What would you say your least favorite character of it was? Because I already have mine pretty much decided on, but I want to know what you think.
I mean, the character that didn't make the most sense was, is his name Billy? Was his name Billy from Mad Max's brother?
I'm not sure. I just know him as Mad Max's brother.
Yeah, he didn't seem to have a lot of point to be there. And it wasn't so much that I didn't like his character. I know that you have some complaints about him. But I mean, I can understand why he was that way after you've seen the father kind of rough him up and the whole situation where he didn't want to move from California. I can understand it. And I also read something that said maybe he will have an attraction for Steve, which could make a point of why he acted the way he did to Steve. But overall, our character, it just didn't develop. What was the point of him being there? I thought they were going to be, some other kids in the lab trying to spy for 11 inside the school. That is really what I thought Mad Max and her brother were going to end up being. And that Mad Max was going to be like, I don't want to tell, but her brother's like, you have to tell. So I thought that's what was going to happen. When I seen 008, I thought they were going to be like 007 and 006 or something like that, and that they were going to be trying to infiltrate the school for the lab. Didn't turn out that way. So I have no idea what in the world he was there for.
I guess it's possible that and if it actually turned out that it was like they were hinting at a gay attraction between him and Steve, then I would actually like that. But at this current moment, it's kind of like with episode 8. Like, although there's a chance that they're building towards something, at this particular moment, without having that other information available to me, he just seems very, very over the top. Like, we talked about how Bob seemed very natural in his character, whereas I feel like this character almost felt like he just walked out of an 80s porn movie, and he just feels very, very awkward to me. Like, he feels jarring.
Yeah, he feels different, especially, I don't know, his look even is different, and I don't know, it fits in there, I guess, but just that overall arcing character of him was it was really weird. He didn't fit in. He definitely didn't fit in. And then he about killed Steve, so you can't like him anyways. Now I guess season 3, maybe a character redemption arc. Season 3, let's just end it with this. Season 3 is going to be the Shadow Monster again. We've seen that the Upside Down is not completely gone. How is it not gone? She closed it. How are they going to bring it back?
Oh, okay. How are they going to do season 3? What was the immediate cliffhanger of the last episode? Like, after the dance, wasn't there something else?
Yeah, it turned into the Upside Down. Yeah. The Shadow Monster was coming up over it, and everything was...
Like, they said that they were planning for 5 seasons, and I was curious about how they would continue to carry it on. I can't imagine, like... I hope it's not something just lazy. It's like, just because.
Just because.
You guys didn't want us to end.
There was a splinter, and he, reached in there and just started opening it again. I don't know, maybe there's still segments of him and Will, and maybe the Upside Down is going to be able to come back through that way. I mean,
maybe maybe it's going to be that corporation again. Maybe they're going to be involved in some capacity.
Maybe in a different area, and then they bring in, I don't have any idea. So the guess
maybe there's more experiments, and
which is why I'm very hyped up, and I'm sure that the rest of America and everywhere else is very hyped up to see Stranger Things season 3, which we're going to probably have to wait till 2019 to see.
I would say at least 2019. It depends. Actually, in retrospect, they might try to fast track filming because they want to get the kids while they're young. This is random, but whenever I looked up Stranger Things, whenever I was preparing for this, I saw that there is some controversy going on right now with Stranger Things because I guess the directors pressured the kids into kissing for that scene. I did not read the article. I just saw the headline. There was some controversy around that, which is funny because I thought it was kind of awkward to see them kissing.
They were really young,
but it was I don't know. It doesn't seem like a big deal to me.
They were 14 though, right?
I know that 11 is 13, and I don't know about the rest of them. And because we actually talked about it, how after I saw her with her slicked back hair, I was like, is she older than I think she is? Because she looked very, very older whenever she has her hair slicked back. But,
well, let's hope that controversy doesn't shut it down, because I also seen that Jonathan was caught with traces of cocaine, and I saw other stories that maybe Jonathan wouldn't be back for season 3. All the kids are getting older. Let's hope that before anything else happens, we get season 3 at least, so that way we aren't left with Stranger Things on a cliffhanger and they try to bring it back with a whole other cast of kids that we don't care about or haven't invested ourselves in. Alright, well, I think that wraps up another episode of Mishmash. Please join us again, where next episode we will be talking about everyone's favorite cartoon, Rick and Morty.
And thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and support the channel. We'd really appreciate it.
Thanks.